He's got a voice like solid gold and a twinkle in his eye. And keeping that eye firmly placed on our parliamentarian buddies is Tony Amos. We welcome Tony and the weekly political roundup.
Tony Amos, good to have you back, Tony.
Good to be here, Jared. Good to see you. Good to see you. The world is a good place.
Ooh, wintertime, Tony. You put on your woolies? Or is woolies underneath that?
No thermals yet. No, the thermals are ready, but they're not on yet, Jared. But it is a bit, isn't it? Eh? It's autumnal, almost winter. Winter's very close, only weeks away now.
Tony, you came in today buzzing. That means that we have a buzz for the week.
Yes, Jared, the buzz this week. You know, it's been suggested, because the Prime Minister is so keen on gay marriage, perhaps we should let him have one. That's the buzz.
Now we're on to the subject of politics.
Oh yes, Jared, politics. Our weekly visit to the sooks and the crooks, the oddballs and misfits, the ruggies and lifters, the rooters and looters of public office we proudly call our politicians.
What are they up to this week, Tone?
In fact, this week it's really all about the Prime Minister, isn't it? It's all about shonky jonky. And why? Well, I'll tell you why. Because over the past couple of weeks there's been drama. We've had the John Banks scandal. Yes, the Kim.com John Banks scandal. I don't mean that Mr. Kim.com has been scandalous. I mean that John Banks has been scandalous. Kim.com actually seems to be a pretty reasonable, forthright, straight up and down fellow, you know. It's the politicians who are the dodgy slime balls, isn't it, eh? Every time. And John Banks has been. John Banks should have gone, of course. He will go. It's only a matter of time because he is tainting the government. And that's why we've seen a lot of John Key in the past week, because the National Party spin doctors have had John Key out there. They've had lovely photos of him swinging a golf club somewhere, talking here, talking there. And then he went on his mate Leighton Smith's talkback show and complained about being picked on by the media. I mean, this is the guy who's happy to bash beneficiaries, happy to send our young people to Australia to find better employment opportunities, happy to be the CEO of our low-wage economy, and he reckons the media's picking on him. Well, I say to John Key, mate, if you can't handle the heat, you might like to leave the kitchen.
And of course, Tony, the asset sales. They're bubbling away as well, so you've got that to contend with, Tony?
Well, the asset sales, interesting, isn't it? Yes, and being referred to frequently by the government as state-owned assets. Not state-owned assets, totally incorrect. They are citizen-owned assets. These things are owned by every New Zealander, regardless of age, race, creed, whatever. We all own them collectively. And these asset strippers, that's what they are. This government is a government of asset strippers. That's what they want to do. They want to strip the assets. Now, we've had these asset stripping cowboys ride through town before. You might recall bulimic beater David Longy, Little Dick Preble and Roger Tuglas. They did it in the early 80s, almost 30 years ago. They rode into town and stripped a few assets out and left town again, never to be seen again, although Roger Tuglas was exhumed by the ACT Party, of course, but now, thankfully, he's gone for good. And now these guys want to do it too. So Shonky Jonky, Stephen Joyce and Bill English, the man we know as the double-dipping dipstick from Dipton, they now want to asset strip us again. What's this mean? What does this mean? This is the sort of thing that happens in some of these third world countries. And the legacy that John Key will leave behind, you know, he's going to be remembered as the Robert Mugabe of the South Pacific.
Well, Tony, as I sit here, it's all happening globally. There's more doom and gloom. Greece seems to be...
There is a bit of doom and gloom in the world, isn't there, right? There's always a bit of doom and gloom. I mean, Australia's economy is booming, but politically it is foundering, a bit like here, you know, although our economy is foundering and the politics are too. But Australia, as I say, lucky country, but unlucky when it comes to politics. Go to Greece, mate, what's happening to the Greeks? They are Euronating on the Europeans. It's outrageous. Mind you, back here, things not looking so good for Shonky Jonky and his team either, because a new poll out just on Friday of last week, before the weekend, shows that if there was another election held, you know, Labor, in coalition with the Greens and New Zealand First and Hone Harawira's Mana Party, could govern. That's the impact that all this dodgy behaviour and dishonest behaviour by some is having on our government. Yeah. You know, it's time these people cleaned up their act. If they can't manage, I've said it before, mate, if they can't manage our assets give somebody else the job.
Any more stars in our government shining at the moment, Tony?
Any more stars? There's a few twinkle toes, but not many twinkle stars, unfortunately. Yeah, but when you look at government, let's have a look at these inept people. Let's have a look at what's happening. We've got the Minister of Education, Hekia Parata. She's the new minister. She's announced that we're going to have bigger class sizes. That's what everybody wants. Isn't that fantastic news? I mean, how incompetent and inept is that? She's out of her depth, of course. Housing Minister Phil Heatley, again, out of his depth. Jonathan Coleman, Junior Minister Coleman, out of his depth. And why are these people out of their depth? Because it's not their ideas. They are simply reading the mantra written for them by Bill English and Stephen Joyce. So that's what's happened to the government. I mean, it's the dumbing down and the closing down sale happening all at the same time. And the only people who can fix that are you and the rest of us.
Does that mean, Tony, we may have a new bunch of List MPs?
Oh, not more List MPs, Stuart. List MPs, the members of Parliament that nobody voted for. However, there's always a good story about a List MP, and I had one pop in and see me the other day.
Oh, yeah?
He did. He called in and he wasn't looking happy. I said, what's wrong? He said, oh, it's personal. I said, well, keep it to yourself. He said, oh, I need to talk to someone about it. I said, well, tell me if you want. He said, oh, it's my new Thai girlfriend.
Oh, so he's...
yeah, and I said, well, yeah, and I said, well, that's cool. Is that cool? He said, well, sort of. I said, well, what's happened? He said, well, it's a bit personal. I said, well, don't tell me. He said, no, I'd like to. I said, well, what is it? He said, well, she says that having a small appendage shouldn't affect our sex life at all. And I thought, well, I said to him, well, that's understanding, very understanding of her, and that's good, isn't it? And he said, oh, I suppose so, but I'd be much happier if she didn't have one at all. And that's politics.